Hello, Smart Money Cheap podcast listeners. Welcome to this week's show. My name is Kirk Chisholm, and I'll be your host. So today I'm joined with Shaan Patel. How you doing today, Shaan?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing great, doing great. Well, today will be pretty interesting. We're going to be talking about college. College is a big area when it comes to financial aspects. And Shaan, tell us a bit about your background.
Yeah, so I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Prep Expert. We're a test preparation and college admissions consulting firm. I've been doing that for about 14 years now, and we've helped over 100,000 students now improve their SAT and ACT scores, get into top colleges. But most importantly, as it relates to today's conversation, get over $100 million in financial aid to pay for college.
Okay, cool. Well, how'd you get started in this space? Why the college space?
Yeah, I was never actually anticipating to be an entrepreneur. Instead, what really happened is I kind of fell into it. And the way that that happened is, well, I improved my own SAT score in high school from average to perfect, which completely changed my life. Got into some of the nation's top universities, got a $500,000 in scholarships. And originally, I wanted to write an SAT prep book by a perfect score. Unfortunately, got 100 rejections from literary agents and publishers. So I started a course. In the very first course that I ever taught, my students had an average SAT score improvement in just 6 weeks of 376 points, which is equivalent to taking students from the 50th percentile and putting them in the 90th percentile. So, of course, I had parents and students who wanted more courses, and I began training other instructors to teach my curriculum, and the rest is history. Now we've helped, thousands of students improve their test scores and get into top colleges with scholarships.
Nice. Yeah, I know it's one of the most stressful parts of a parent's life is trying to get your kid into the best college they can to give them the best foot forward. Um, but when it comes to test prep, like what kind of things do you teach people? I mean, taking tests is kind of a silly way to see if you're a good fit for college, but it's how they use it. So what kind of things do you teach people? Just like how to take them, or what do you what's the
Yeah,
secret
so
sauce?
we usually teach like around 100 strategies in our courses for each section. So there's going to be the math section, the English section, the reading section. So the reading section will teach you how to break down a passage, how to read it more efficiently, how to find the main idea quickly, um, how to eliminate answer choices that are going to have certain words that are never going to be the correct answer. For the math section, we'll teach you how to plug in numbers to avoid any algebra. We also teach general test taking strategies like how to reduce your test taking anxiety, how to improve your study ability and ability to focus, which is so important now with high school students and TikTok. But basically the entire spectrum of end to end, how to ace these exams.
Okay, cool. So let's take it a step back for a minute. When people are looking to get their kid into college, what are the areas that they need to focus on if they want to have the most success?
Yeah, it's more competitive than ever to get into top colleges. They receive more applications, and that's often a function now of it just being so easy to click a button on the Common App and apply to tons and tons of colleges. So in order to stand out, I think there's a few things you've got to do. One is you've got to have a high GPA. That's like bare minimum. So you have to do well in your high school courses. But then on top of that, you've got to have these high test scores because that really separates you from the pack when you have a 99th percentile SAT score. Because there's been so much grade inflation in the schools over the past 20 years. I don't know, Kirk, when you were in high school, but when I was in high school, for sure, it was hard to get an A. Like, it was
Hmm.
not easy. Now, almost the last statistic I read was 47% of all high school seniors graduate with an A average. So, I mean, like when you have all these colleges are getting applications and every application has an A average, you got to have a high test score and you got to have really good extracurriculars. Typically, good community service and good leadership positions, because at the end of the day, these colleges and these scholarships committees, they want to reward students who are going to be the future leaders of tomorrow. So you can display that through your leadership activities and your community service activities.
Yeah, it's good. It's good insight. Yeah, I remember the school I went to, they did not do grade inflation, even though their peer schools did. So it kind of put us at a disadvantage. And on top of that, I think none of the other schools did class rank with us. I think some of them did. They didn't do that, but they had some weird formula, which was no other school did it. So it definitely wasn't an advantage. But the way I hear it, everyone's got graded inflation now. So it's kind of like, what's the point?
It's
Um,
crazy. Some of these kids have like 4.8 GPAs, it doesn't even make sense anymore. Yeah.
How's it even possible? I think get a 4.8.
Yeah,
You got
yeah,
120 average? Like what, how's that work?
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So, well, it's interesting. Yeah, I know COVID kind of screwed things up with a lot of schools. Some of them stopped even accepting SAT scores for a few years. I think some of the top ones because things were so screwed up. But I think now they're adding them back. Okay, so SAT scores are important. Um, you have grades, which depending on where you go, it's important, but probably not the biggest needle. So you mentioned other things like community service, leadership positions. Like, what are things like that kids can do to put themselves in a really good position for that kind of check in the box?
Yeah. If you want to kind of kill two birds with one stone, one of the kind of advanced tips that I would have for parents and students listening is have your student start either a club or a nonprofit in high school. Because one, that will get your student to automatically be the founder and president of an organization. And two, if you relate that club or that nonprofit to some kind of community service activity, whether it's helping seniors with tech, whether it's raising money for, a overseas, or not even overseas, or a homeless shelter, that kind of thing, it kind of kills two birds with one stone. Right now, you have leadership and you have community service, and you're doing good for the community. So it's a win-win-win. So I'd say that's like an advanced tactic that we advise our students to do.
Nice. Nice. That's a pretty good tip that requires students to have a certain amount of get up and go though. What about the kids
Yeah.
that aren't quite so motivated? Because I think that'd be a lot for an adult, nonetheless, high school students. So,
Yeah, I usually don't recommend doing the nonprofit. I just say, it's easier just to start the club because obviously the 501(c)(3) paperwork, but some students are gung ho about their mission and want to do it and we certainly have some students do it. Yeah.
nice. Nice. Well, it sounds like some good ideas. Um, so what else? What if they're not? I know sometimes community service can be tough. I mean, doing it, but getting them to do that and on top of all their other extracurriculars. Some kids play sports and they have other activities. What other areas? Because I know when I was looking at colleges, my high school basically said they're looking for a student with diverse interests and well-rounded. And I've heard that's changed.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, so you made an interesting point earlier, which is colleges went test optional for a while with COVID because they literally couldn't have testing centers where people were 6 feet apart. And so now almost I'd say 80% of the top 20 and probably 60 to 70% of the top 50 colleges have brought back testing requirements. So why is that? Because to what you just said, the diverse requirements that they were a lot of DEI was getting pushed in colleges and universities. And what they found was it was actually creating worse outcomes, not only for the colleges in terms of the students that they were getting, they weren't academically as competitive, but it was actually also producing worse outcomes for the students because they weren't able to keep up with the academic curriculums. And that's why you're seeing this huge reversal at places like Harvard, MIT, Stanford have all reinstated testing, and not even just the top colleges. You look at University of Miami, University of Texas. So academics is coming back in a big, big way, and merit is coming back in a big way with both GPA and standardized testing. Obviously, the extracurriculars, the diverse interests are still important, but it's a huge reversal in the trend we saw for the past few years in the college admission space.
yeah, I'm sure the Supreme Court ruling was a small part of that
Yeah.
too.
Hmm.
So no, what I meant with diverse thing was not diversity of people. I meant when I was in high school, what they said was you need to have a diverse level of interest. So,
Oh
for
yeah.
instance, I think junior, or senior year, they were doing they did club photos. So a bunch of us, there was like 10 of us, we were in like 10 club photos, even though we weren't in the clubs. You could say, hey, I was in that club. See the photo?
That's so funny.
And and they had all these clubs which they didn't really do much, but the point was is a lot of people did it just to pad the resume, even though it wasn't significant. And that was a big deal growing up. People were like, oh, you need to have a wide variety of things. But
Yeah.
now what I've heard is it's very narrow. They don't want that. What they want is what they used to want is a diverse student body or students. Now what I heard they want is a diverse student body, but the individual students are very narrow. So like you're
Hmm.
really focused on tiddlywinks. You're the best tiddlywink player around, and then they want another person who's the best ukulele player around, and they want all these like narrow things, but within the student body it's diverse. So is that true, or I don't know if that's true. This is what I heard.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Typically what we recommend is have a student focus on like two or three activities that they're really passionate about and try to craft that into your future career, right? So if you're really interested in being a doctor in the future, have two or three activities. It could be hospital volunteering, it could be starting a healthcare club, it could be shadowing a local physician, so that it kind of crafts this narrative about what your future career or interests might be. um the diversity thing, people started gaming to your point, and it does not look good to college admissions committees now if you're involved in 10 clubs that are highly different. And on top of that, high school students are already so busy with their high school activities and sports. Everyone knows you can't be involved in 10 different clubs. So it's actually throws up a red flag to a lot of college admissions and scholarship committees if you're too spread thin, basically.
Okay. Yeah, good to know. That's so I heard a lot of stats when it comes to trying to find the right college. I had heard I think it was in Arizona, where the guidance counselor, there's one guidance counselor for like every 900 students.
Hmm.
I think that's more extreme example, but how do kids and parents deal with the fact that the guidance counselors are overwhelmed? They're just checking boxes. They're trying to meet their own quotas too, and it's not always, I guess, helpful. So how does that kind of play in right now?
Yeah, unfortunately, whether you're at a private school, a public school, the student or the counselor to student ratio is atrocious, even at the best private schools. And so, parents and students really have to do their research and take their college futures into their own hands. When choosing the right college, I would say it's very related to this show because college, at the end of the day, I think of it as a financial decision. You really have to think about the ROI you're going to get. And I used to tell students to go to the best college possible. Um, and now I think I've changed my position and I tell them to go to the college that makes the most financial sense. And the reason for that is because I've seen too many parents and students get hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt attending institutions and majoring in things that are not going to get them they're not doing a STEM major, and they're doing like a history or a language arts major, and then they don't get the ROI back and they're paying loans back for dozens of years. And so that I think is the most important factor is, it's better to go to a really good state's college then and pay state in-state tuition and get some scholarships into it and really reduce your cost of college rather than it is to, let's say, for example, go to Harvard, but you're $400,000 in debt when you come out of it. So it's really a cost benefit financial decision.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I heard somebody say, I can't remember who it was. It was one of the social media influencers. Gary Vaynerchuk,
Yeah.
who made this comment where he said, college is now are a negative ROI for your investment. Do you find that's
Hmm.
true? And if so, how do people deal with that?
Yeah, I love when social media influencers espouse this ideology on people and say, college is a scam, college is a waste of time, college is negative ROI. If you look at all the data, that's not true. So, college graduates still make over $1 million more across their, working lifetime than high school graduates. The unemployment rate is half, and I actually think that's going to continue to be the case. Um, Especially with AI and automation, you've got to be on top of, what's going on in the new world. And if you're not, you might just get automated out. So my point being, all the statistics, if you actually look at the stats, college graduates make more, they're unemployed less. Now, I do agree with Gary Vaynerchuk and the social media influencers that you don't want to go into significant debt to go to college because college education at the end of the day is somewhat commoditized because an economics course at Harvard or an economics course at your great state school in wherever you live is probably about the same. You're not going to learn that much different information, but there is a difference in terms of the people you might meet, the network you might get, and the jobs you might get after. So it does make a difference still, and that's in all the statistics. And sure, you could learn it on YouTube, but I guarantee you, you're not going to get a job at Goldman Sachs if you graduate from YouTube University, but you will if you graduate from, an Ivy League.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with that. Somebody actually told me that when I went to college. They kind of broke the mold and say, well, college is not about the grades. It's about the people you meet, the connections you make. Um, and so I enjoyed my college experience and met a lot of great
Mhm.
people. And it's true. Um, I think the challenge is it's gotten so expensive that it's basically
Yeah.
a 4-year party where you're networking with people and getting to know them. And there's some good parts about that, but at the end of the day, it's a question mark. I mean, I'm not sure if any school has hit the 100,000 mark, but one's really close. It's like 98 or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, which you're talking 400, 500,000 plus extras, um, to go to college. And then even right now, like you said, with AI, it, I had a conversation with a client of mine the other day, and he had a daughter, and he was trying to figure out like with her like what should you major in. And he and I were talking, and he's like, well, we got to figure out, he's like, these are things that you can look at and potentially have um opportunity. But that's changed over the last 10 years. Like he and I have been
Hmm.
talking for many, many years. And like initially it was like, well, you need to get into coding because that's where the next thing is. And you need to get into running your business, and that's what, and it's changed, and now it's like I don't even know because
Yeah.
AI can code, AI can do all this stuff, and who knows where it'll be 5 years from now. But where's the real value in college now, other than being a college professor where you're teaching other kids? But what like I got a liberal arts education with my schooling, so it was well-rounded, quote unquote,
Yeah.
which is fine, but I'm not sure it taught me a lot of practical skills for the workforce. It just got me my first job. And after
Yeah.
my first job got me my second job, and no one really looks at your college education after your first job. So I kind of, and I'm just kind of painting the picture of how I see it. And I'm wondering, is this going to change dramatically? Do you see a time in the near future where we potentially, you know, colleges are online or things change? Because I feel like the system is a bit broken. Um,
Hmm.
it's not. I think we saw that with some of the congressional hearings where the heads of the Ivy League schools make themselves look stupid on national
Yeah.
TV. Like, it kind of brings up this, what is the value of college conversation? I think I still find it hard to say no, like we're not going to do that for my kids. But on the other hand, I say, well, if I had $500,000, would I give it to my kids to start a business and a life, or would I
Yeah.
give it to them to go to college? I'm not sure what the right answer is.
Yeah, and I don't think they're mutually exclusive, right? I think what you want to do is go to a good college that's affordable. Look, I got into the Ivy League. I turned it down because I got a full scholarship to another university. So I went to University of Southern California. And that's how I think everyone should think about it is like, I can go to this great school that I got a scholarship to or a state school, or go to this really expensive college. And for most people, it's going to make sense to go to the state school or go to a school that you get a scholarship to. et cetera. Because to your point, the value is just not there to spend, 80,000, like you said, getting up to $100,000 per year. But I do think there are some solutions that are coming into play now with the cost, with respect to the cost of college. So, for example, Harvard, I think just last month announced that now the tuition is completely free for all families who are making under $200,000. MIT did the same, and so obviously, hopefully that number keeps going up, and it's families making under 300,000, 400,000. If you can do that, you can effectively make college free for 90% of the population. And so that's when you get into something really, really amazing. We'll see if that, trend continues throughout all colleges and universities. But even if it doesn't, there are plenty of private scholarships, college funded scholarships that you can do to reduce that you can apply to reduce your cost of college. But to your point, the value of college, I think, is the network that you get, the jobs that you will get, the when you put in a job application in the future. So I'm a techno optimist on AI. I think we're going to create a lot of economies that we don't even know about or see yet. But having that college education, and especially if you can at least minor in some kind of machine learning, AI, data science, you'll be so much more valuable than the next applicant. Obviously, if you can major in it because that's what you really love, that's even better. But there is still a lot of value in that compared to, well, I learned about it on YouTube and I think I can do it. Unless you have some real experience because someone's already given you an opportunity, that's different. But I think there will still be a lot of value in the college education going into the workforce.
Okay. So let's talk about how to reduce the cost of college. Now, this is something that in my field, advisors run around and say, no, you need to put money in a 529 and that'll help you save for college. And I just learned in the last 2 years that actually there's a lot of tactics you can use that it's not about saving for college, it's saving on the cost of college. So basically reducing the cost of college, which
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people are thinking about. I mean, scholarships and all that, but I think there's a lot of tactics. So, what have you seen are some great ways to reduce the cost of college for families?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people get worried about the cost of college because they're thinking about the sticker price. So, the average sticker price of a private university to attend for 4 years is 200,000. The average sticker price for public universities is 100,000. Of course, I recommend, starting a college 529 savings plan and saving for your cost of college. But the key is really to reduce your cost, right? So one of the biggest ways to reduce it, I've kind of touched on it a few times, is going in state for college versus out of state. Most states have great in-state university educations, and that will, you know, oftentimes in-state tuition is one third to one fourth of what it is for out-of-state folks at these public universities. So that's going to be a huge one off the bat.
Okay. So, now what about um, are there other tactics people use in state, out of state? I mean, you don't have to give away the whole farm here, but I mean, there's scholarships, there's merit, there's
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff. Can you kind of at least give us kind of like a high level overview of the different areas people should be thinking about?
Yeah, yeah, let's talk a little bit about scholarships. So scholarships, there's really need-based and merit-based scholarships are the two buckets. What's great about scholarships and grants is that they don't need to be paid back like, loans would be. And in terms of the way that I think about scholarships, usually, unless your family makes under 150 to $200,000, you shouldn't be looking at need-based scholarships because you're not going to usually qualify. So then you're stuck in the merit-based scholarships. Now, the good thing about merit-based scholarships is there's over $7 billion annually awarded by private companies and colleges themselves. Now, the two big buckets I would think about with respect to merit-based scholarships to reduce your cost of college, there's two keys here that I really want people to focus on. One is apply for local scholarships. So what I mean by that is most scholarships are open to the entire nation. They'll be open to all 50 states. But there are some scholarships, if you search in your local area, let's say you live in Princeton, New Jersey, type into Google scholarships for students in Princeton or scholarships for students in New Jersey, there's going to be a lot of scholarships that are only for that particular geographic area. What's beautiful about these scholarships is instead of having 100,000 applications from students across the nation, they might only have 200 applications or 100 applications, or if you're lucky, 50 applications. So your chances of winning those scholarships significantly increase. And this is one of the biggest hacks I have to how you can I won 19 local scholarships this way myself when I was in high school, and this is how a lot of our students win so many scholarships. They focus in on a local scholarships. And then the second piece of it with respect to merit-based scholarships is going to be the college funded scholarships. So, the Ivy League universities do not give any merit-based scholarships. So parents who get too obsessed over the Ivy League end up losing out on scholarships from places like Duke, Johns Hopkins, USC, where I went, where they have merit-based scholarships, where basically they'll give you a quarter tuition, half tuition, even full tuition scholarship based on your child's grades, test scores, and extracurricular activities. So you've got to apply to these other universities out there as well.
So why don't the Ivy Leagues do that? I mean, if every other school does it, why don't they do it?
It's a great question. I think they have always been of the thought, I guess, that it's almost, in my opinion, I think it's because they think that all of their students are already so high level that it would be hard to differentiate who to give a merit-based scholarship or not. Whether that's the right opinion or not, I don't know. I know they do focus a lot of their endowments on need-based aid. So like I said, Harvard is giving any family who makes under $200,000 free tuition. So they might just focus their efforts there, but I think it's a combination of the two.
Interesting. So when they're choosing, are they need blind or are they looking at that as part of their process?
Yeah, they should be need blind when they're actually looking at the application, because the financial aid application is separate and reviewed separately by the financial aid office after you're accepted.
Okay. So basically, they're not, so when they're looking at students, they don't know if you can pay or not if they're going to admit you,
Yeah, technically that's how it should work. Yeah.
technically.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Um, all right. What else do you think people need to know here when they're thinking about colleges we haven't kind of talked about? Any kind of final thoughts?
Final thoughts is for any parents with younger students, I'm talking like seventh grade, eighth grade, ninth grade, 10th grade. Um, Start thinking about the preliminary SAT, the PSAT. And the reason I say that is because a lot of people don't realize, but the PSAT is also the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. So if your student scores well on that test, which happens in October of your 11th grade year, literally, there's over 100 colleges and universities across the nation that will automatically give your student a half tuition or full tuition scholarship. So one 2-hour test, by scoring well on it, your child can get $100,000 plus college scholarship to, 50 to 100 universities, which is very nice. If your employer told you that, they're going to give you $100,000 raise if you score well on this test, I bet you'd study for that test. So for parents with younger students, study for the PSAT. Don't just think, oh, it's just the pre-SAT like every other parent out there. It's big deal because if you score well, it could literally pay for all of your college, which is amazing.
What kind of score do you need to get like 50% or 100% of the price off?
So it's usually the top 1% in your state. So you got to be in the 99th percentile. So if you live in an academically competitive state like Massachusetts, that's going to be like a 1460 out of 1520 on the PSAT. If you live in a less academically competitive state like where I'm from in Nevada, you only need to get like a 1380 out of 1520, which is very doable. So it's state by state, depending on how well students in your state perform.
What is mass again?
It's around 1460 out of 1520. Now, it changes like by 10 points, depending on how well the students that year do, but it's usually around that.
You got a room I can rent for when my kids are gone?
Actually, that's a strategy some parents will do is they'll move during 11th grade year to a state that's less competitive. It's the extreme bear. It's the but just to get that PSAT national merit because you could say, well, I lived in this state and so I should get that.
Yeah, maybe take a year off the kid's junior year
Yeah.
so I don't work, so I'm not making any
Yeah,
money.
it could all get paid back. Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay, cool. Well, Sean, I really appreciate you coming to the show, sharing your wisdom with us. Where can people find more about you?
Yeah, so for parents and students who are interested in college admissions, scholarship applications, and improving their students' SAT, PSAT, ACT scores, we have online SAT and ACT courses as well as college consulting. You can find it all on our website, prepexpert.com. That's PREPEXPERT.com.
Awesome. Well, Sean, really appreciate you coming to the show and sharing your wisdom with us. We'll bring you back on in the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Hey, Doug, did you hear? We're giving away free money. Well, I'll tell you about it in a minute, but before I do, there's a saying in the mining community, well, precious metals mining, that is. The saying is that if you want the best deals, you have to be in the room. Now, you're probably thinking, what does it mean to be in the room? Well, I'll tell you. Being in the room means that you're on the short list of people who get invited to be a part of the best deals. These are the deals that most investors will never have access to. You mean like IPOs? Nope, IPOs are chump change. Those are for retail investors, small potatoes. That's nothing compared to these deals. These deals would have you salivating to get access to them. Once you know they exist, you will never look at investing the same way again. I almost don't want to even tell you that they exist because it will ruin your thinking of how the investing world really works. Now, you might be excited that these deals exist, but you only have access to the deals if you're an insider or in the room, as they call it. Now, as loyal listeners to the show, I'm going to give you a chance to be in the room. Money Tree Investing Podcast has created the Insiders Club. This is a community of our show's members who are loyal listeners of the show and want to get more out of their investing experience. Being a part of the Insiders Club gives you insider status for upcoming events and webinars, discounts, free stuff and books, and influence on the future direction of the show. This is a great opportunity to join us as we expand our content and services. Oh, and did I mention free money? Yes, in the next few weeks, I'll be giving away free money to our members of the Insiders Club as my appreciation for listening to the show. Now, there's no cost to join the Insiders Club. Just go to moneytreepodcast.com/free money today to join the community. That's www.moneytreepodcast.com/free money. I hope to see you in the room. All right, that was a great interview with Sean. I really appreciate him coming on the show. Now we're into the panel portion of the show where we have our very own Barb Freeberg. Hey, Barb.
Hi, happy to be here.
Glad to have you here. And we also have our very own Diana Perkins. Hey, Diana.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's great to be back.
Yeah, glad to have you both. Well, let's just dive right in. So Barb, what were some of your thoughts with the interview?
You know, going to college today is so much different than historically. Um, I actually got my master's in counseling and higher education back many years ago, and the theory was you go to college not to get a good job, but to become a more well-rounded individual. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm not paying $60,000 a year to become well-rounded, and I don't think really many people are today. So, and going to college was not seen as optional either. Like today, there's so many certificate programs that you can get into that give you really marketable skills. And I think employers are perfectly fine with those in lieu of a college education. So it's not assumed that everyone needs to go to college. And I think that's a whole different perspective than has been the norm for likely the past 50 plus years or so.
Well, I can tell you this, Barb, if you're against getting a well-rounded education, you're not going to become a blood with that attitude. So just you're going to have to shape up. You're never going to get into the supper clubs with that kind of attitude, you know?
That's something I've had to resolve.
All right. Well, Diana, what about you? Where's some of your takeaways?
Well, one of the statistics that was mentioned around GPA inflation blew my mind. When I was in high school, there was a little bit of that, but I think the statistic was 47% of high school graduates today graduate with an A average. And so I thought that was an interesting statistic to, back the idea that, hey, these test scores really do matter because you need something that differentiates yourself. The other thing that stood out to me is I remember when I was preparing for college, or even actually way before when I was young, my parents instilled in me, open a savings account. I think I was 8 or 9 years old. This is where you'll deposit your allowance and save for college. And so I thought the perspective around it's not just, putting money in a 529 plan or saving since you're a kid. It's making, kind of what Barb was saying, having that decision, is the juice worth the squeeze? Is the investment worth what you'll get out of it? I think it was $1 million over the life of your career, and half the unemployment rate, I think were the numbers, to have that degree, and then the cost savings decision around all of that. So of course, for finance people, I'm thinking ROI, kind of like Barb said, it wasn't a choice for me. You go to college after high school, and now I think folks are looking at it more critically because it's so expensive.
Yeah, price always comes into play. You're saying about the 47% high school students get an A average. Was this Lake Wobegon where everyone's above average? Like, what is going on? I always thought C was the average, and I don't know. Maybe I'm old school, but like when we went to school, some people use the bell curve or whatever. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but regardless, like I get it. I mean, we growing up, it was you get hurt, you rub some dirt on it, and you get back up there and you get back in the fray, right? And now it's like, oh, hold on, let's all stop what we're doing so we can all tell everyone how much we appreciate you and your skin knee. Like, everyone's, I don't know. To me, grade inflation is ridiculous. I remember it happening actually when I was in high school, not at my school because they wanted none of that. They're actually adamant about, no, we're not doing it this way. We're not doing it this way. We're going to give you real grades. And it was so well known that the colleges actually had a different system for the school because they were like, yeah, everyone else inflates their grades, but they don't. So like we have to like it's so ridiculous. Like it's a game that you have to play and you can cheat at it and it's like, well, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. Like it's just it's beyond me, I'll tell you. It's like, what's the point of this whole charade? Are you there to learn? Are you there to become a well-rounded person, Barb? I mean, I it does make me wonder, is college worth your time and money? What do you think, Barb?
You know, I look at myself back from age 18 to 22, and I was an idiot. I was an abject idiot. Yes, I did graduate my bachelor's degree with an economics degree, and I got out, and that was fine. But the decisions that I made and the things that I did not take advantage of my college education. I sometimes say to myself, if I went to college now, I would study so much harder. I would appreciate the knowledge that I'm learning so much more than I did. My goal was get the best grades you can with the least amount of work and make sure you're partying every day. And frankly, I went to a state school and it wasn't terribly expensive when I went to college. And so it wasn't the big financial issue that it is today. But I think of these students today who are going to college who are facing like $60,000 or $40,000, $50,000 of college expenses. I mean, nobody took out loans when I went to college. I would be adamant, we're all talking about ROI, that if you choose to go to a regular 4-year college today and you're not serious, like I wasn't, don't take out a loan unless you are absolutely sure, or at least not a big one, unless you are absolutely sure that your income is going to justify it. And find another way, because that is just throwing money down the toilet. If you're taking out a loan to party, um, and live in a cool apartment with your friends, it makes no sense. In other words, when you're starting your college journey, really look at yourself, and parents, look at your kids as, how are you going to maximize these next 4 years so that you get a decent education that prepares you to enter the workforce without bankrupting your future?
Yeah, if you think you were dumb at 18, imagine if you were a boy, an 18-year-old boy, Barb. You'd be really dumb. I mean, if you think about it, like we're if you understand like the statistics around athletes, so athletes, there's a statistic when they retire within 2 years, 87% of them are bankrupt and or divorced. Um, in part because they're making millions of dollars and their frontal lobes haven't developed. Like you're giving an 18-year-old kid tens of millions of dollars. What do you think they're going to do with it? They're going to blow it on all the stupid stuff that they do. And then they're 30 and they're broke. And, it's the same thing here, right? You're allowing an 18-year-old kid to have a few $100,000 of debt, which is basically well, you're not really giving it to them. You're giving it to the colleges because I'm not sure if you really get the financial benefit, but you're effectively giving a kid $400,000 of money that they're wasting on college. What's the difference? I mean, honestly, except for the fact that you're in debt and you can't get out of it for like the next 100 years. But what about you, Diana? What are your thoughts? Is a juice worth the squeeze? Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, see, I think the college experience is worth it, and I think it goes beyond just academics. I know during the interview, it was talked about, a lot of these classes, these intro classes are commoditized. So whether you take them at Harvard or a state school, you know, it's, it's a wash. But the networking opportunities, if you go away for college, what you learn about yourself for many, probably most students, that's the first time they're away from home and living, semi-independently, but still kind of in a safe, controlled environment. So I think if you look at the college experience holistically beyond just the academics and as a means to an end to get a job, I think that's an argument, for, that it is worth it. That said, I think the decision to go to college and which college you go to, whatever that higher education institution is, should be looked at through a financial lens, like anything else. So the points that are being brought up, are you going to leave after 4 years $100,000 in debt with a low paying job, or maybe the job market has softened, which happened when I graduated. And there were a lot of people who had, graduates, great degrees, good school, but nowhere to go. So I think looking at it, can I afford this? There were some cost saving strategies that were discussed. Did I study hard in high school so I can get scholarships? And if it doesn't make that financial sense going in, maybe you lower your standards. Maybe there is a different state school or a local university where you take the first 2 years. And then after 2 years, maybe then you move on to another university or even for graduate school, which I believe our guest did. I think he went to Yale for his MBA. So I think there are other strategies involved. I do agree you need to look at it through a financial lens, but I think, and maybe just like my personal bias, I think the whole experience of it sounds like Barb maybe had a similar experience. You have the academics, you have the social environment, you have the independence. I feel like there's no substitute for that. So just don't go bankrupt doing it.
I should have had a little less of the experience. I had a little too much of the
Oh,
experience.
I think we all did, Barb. That was the benefit
Yeah,
of it.
yeah. It's a miracle I came out halfway accomplished. But I like the idea so much of doing your first 2 years at a community college, or even, although online's kind of isolating, but financially, you can work, you can study online. I was amazed yesterday when I was getting a coffee at Starbucks and I saw a flyer on their bulletin board that said, "We offer free tuition to Arizona State University online for our workers." I mean, what a benefit. So, look, you're going to go grow up either way. And so you have a year or two at a college where you can, have that college experience, and maybe have another couple of years where you're really saving money and just getting your GE, your general ed courses out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, Diana, you said something about the network. I mean, if you're going to Harvard or Yale, I don't care what the cost is, right? That's the whole point of going there. It's not because they have the best education. I have many friends who went to Ivy League schools, and none of them will say, "Oh, the education is first rate." It's like, yeah, it's fine, right? It's not better. It's just the name and the network, right? I mean, if you went to Faber College, I'm sure the network is probably not going to be too great, right? But if you go to Harvard, it is. So I agree 100%. I'm not sure if it's worth 400 grand, but having a network, like I live in Boston, having a Harvard network would be great. Now, if I lived in California, maybe not so much, right? If I went to Stanford, living in Boston is probably not the best, right? So you have to be where the network is. You have to have, the network's beneficial. But and I always use this example, like BC is a good school, right? But if you go live somewhere else in the country, no one cares about BC. People in Boston do, right? If there's a great network here, but other parts of the country, not so much. So I think there's there's a lot of really important decisions that have to be made by an 18-year-old who has no foresight into the future, how the world works, and you're expected to spend 400 grand and let's cross our fingers and hope we chose right. Because if you didn't, well, there's always grad school, and you could pay another 300 grand for that too. So don't worry, we got a backup plan. So I kind of look at it as if you look back, like way, way back, where they had apprenticeships and you started as an apprentice, you became a journeyman, and you worked your way up. You kind of figured back then you didn't have a choice. You just were like, here's what you're doing, kid. Your last name is Miller, and so you're going to mill for the rest of your life. Back in ancient England, that's the way things worked. Right? Your last name was your profession. But it makes me wonder where the line is, because everyone wants to get their kid into Harvard, although maybe not now after the last year. But, Harvard aside, everyone wants to get their kid into an Ivy League school because of that reason. Does anybody actually want to send their kid to college for the education? Like, it makes me wonder. Like, I I almost feel like what kids should do is they should just go to work. And then at some point in the future, if they decide, yeah, maybe I'll go to college, because it's become such a system. It's such a money-making system that you have to keep up with the Joneses in order to compete. Now, fortunately, I'm in an industry where you don't need a college degree to excel. But the odd thing is college basically gets you your first job. After that, you don't really need it, other than to get into grad school. But if that's your thing, then that's your thing. But for a real job, you just need a first job. Your second job says, hey, what did you do in your last job? They don't say, oh, would you go to college? Because they don't care. So it makes me wonder, at what point do we as a society just say, I've had enough? On top of the fact that you can have virtual education now. I can learn anything I want on the internet for a heck of a lot cheaper than college, and probably better quality in the area I want to focus on. So at what point do people just say, F it, I'm just going to go learn my stuff, get a high paying job, and screw college? I don't know. maybe college goes back to the way it used to be, where it was just a bunch of rich kids or their parents sent to a school and everybody else just went to work, so they could learn all the liberal arts of the world and be well-rounded people. I don't know. I mean, that's the way it used to be. It also used to be such that colleges were basically a group of kids that got together, or young adults that got together and said, I want to learn about this thing. Let's go find somebody who's an expert in that thing and they can teach us. And there were no administrators. There's no like overarching administration. It was just people got together and said, I want to learn. And at one point they said, wouldn't it be smart to hire an administrator to do all of the work so we could just focus on learning? And then it just took on this big behemoth. So I don't know. To me it makes me wonder. My kids are going into sophomore year in high school, so I got a big decision to make, and I really don't want to make it, but it is what it is. So what do we think about the is taking out a college loan a good idea? And let me caveat this, because when you take out a mortgage, you're also taking out a big loan on an asset that is appreciating. But if you're taking a loan out on yourself, you're also appreciating in value. Hopefully, most people are. So is it a good idea? What do you think, Barb?
I think that's a great question. And just to look back, my father, who was a Depression era baby, went into the service. After he got out of the service, he used his GI benefits to pay for college. He worked part-time and went to school, and in 3 years got out with an engineering degree. Okay. Can you do that today? Maybe. But you have to have a tremendous amount of drive. Now, today, if you take out a loan, the problem with getting a loan today, they're everywhere. And many students don't understand what they're actually doing. They don't understand what an interest rate is. They don't understand the payback terms. And they don't understand a variable versus a fixed rate loan. And if you are taking out a loan, which I'm not saying is necessarily a bad thing, you should be educated about it. And you should attempt to take out the smallest loan you possibly can. And I would be more comfortable with someone taking out a loan who was going into a field that was higher paying, such as being an engineer or a finance person, or maybe someone in cybersecurity or computer science. They pretty much, at least up until now, have had pretty high paying jobs. So if you took out a loan, you could afford to pay it back. So I think it's a nuanced question. It's not a yes or no question, but it also piggybacks on the question of we don't know what the job market's going to look like in the future, because we are in a sea change of the economy and the society with the advent of AI. And so we don't know what kind of jobs are really going to be out there in the next 10 or 20 years. So that makes this decision even more difficult.
I think you raise a good point, Barb. AI is going to completely change the landscape of work and what skills are needed. Because even if AI doesn't take all our jobs are going to change. So what are we learning in college? We're learning how to memorize. Like, why are schools still teaching how to memorize stuff? I understand learning how to do math, even though we have calculators, because it teaches you how to think and helps wire your brain properly. But teaching you how to memorize stuff doesn't help. It's always been stupid, and people still do it. But that's not a useful skill. Collaborating is a useful skill. In school, they call that cheating, but like collaborating with other people, that's a useful life skill that you use everywhere. Why wouldn't you teach that? I mean, seriously. So it raises a lot of questions for sure. What do you think, Diana?
Yeah, I think, in terms of, whether or not it makes sense to take out a loan to fund your college education, I agree with Barb in terms of educating yourself. I also agree. I don't think it's black and white. I think with the decision, say you apply to 5 schools, you need to weigh the cost and benefits of each. Is the networking going to be worth it here where I think I can land a job? Do I know I'm going to accounting and this is one of the top accounting schools? I'm basically guaranteed a position because everyone needs accountants. That's what I was told when I was 18, while I started my career that way. So weighing the costs and benefits and understanding, yes, the terms, interest rates, I'm learning more and more. I don't have children myself, but I learn from my friends and others that I meet. This still isn't really being taught in high school. Just these financial aspects that you need to know as an adult, whether it's your mortgage or a loan for college or taxes, etc. So I always tell my clients, when it comes to finance, ask the questions you need, to do enough research until it's black and white. So that said, that's my caveat. So if you do your research, you understand the terms, you understand the payback. Is it subsidized? Is it unsubsidized? Is it a grant that I don't have to pay back? And you fully understand how you're funding that education. Maybe you have help from, your parents or a guidance counselor to help you educate in that. I think it can be justified to take a loan. I agree, obviously you want as small as possible, but if it means getting into a school that basically guarantees you a job in your field, I know there are no guarantees, but there are high probabilities, maybe it is worth it. Or if it's $400,000, we don't know what the job market's going to look like. Maybe we take classes over here and we get our graduate degree there, maybe when we're working for a big consulting firm and they foot the bill. So I think it comes down to your strategy, educating yourself if you do want to take the risk of that loan at such a young age, and understanding how to manage that after you graduate, just understand the landscape, just like any financial decision.
Yeah, no, that's great. So, as we get close to wrapping it up here, kind of final thoughts, Barb. What should people be thinking about when they're thinking about college? I know you made a comment earlier about, spend some time in community college first. What do you think is the best way people should be thinking about it as we kind of wrap this up?
Spend some time, first of all, thinking about your future. And some people are really good at having a good idea of what they want to do when they get out of school. Other people, not so much. So get a ballpark. Even if you choose one area, you can always change later. And then, like all of us have been saying, research your options, research the schools, the financial opportunities, the places to get educated, from online to private schools, public schools, community colleges, and sometimes private schools with their scholarships, etc., can actually end up being cheaper than going to a public school. And then with your parents, with your guidance counselor, reading and learning online, try and make a good economic and also a personal decision based on what your goals are and your expectations are for the next few years of your life. So I'm Barbara Friedberg. You can find me online on YouTube and at my website, Barbara Friedberg Personal Finance.
Great. Thanks for coming on, Barb. And Diana, the final thoughts from you.
Yeah, my final thoughts are, like any major investment, that the college decision should be looked at through the lens of ROI, and agree, look at your options, educate yourself, know that you can always pivot. If it's not the right decision up front, it's good having multiple schools. So when you visit the campus, if it doesn't feel right. So I say, look at it holistically. The financial aspect is a really big part of that. And then the college experience, we fold that in as well. I still see, even though it's more intangible, there's a lot of value there. So you just have to determine what that means to you. And I'm Diana Perkins. You can find me on my website, tradingwithdiana.com.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, Diana. That's the show for this week. Thank you again for joining us on Money Tree Investing Podcast. My name's Kirk Chisholm, Wealth Manager of Innovative Advisor Group. We don't just manage your wealth, we make your life better. You can find more about me at innovativewealth.com. And of course, you can find me every week here on this show. You can also check out our show at Money Tree Investing Podcast. On our website, you'll have access to the show notes, resources, and the archive shows. Please remember to subscribe on our YouTube channel for immediate access to the new shows when they're released. When you subscribe to the show, it allows us to get access to some of the top minds of investing in personal finance. While you're here, please leave a comment and question if you want us to address it on the show. Have a great week ahead, and remember, no one will care about your money like you do, so invest in your life.